Good afternoon, folks. We're just going to give a few minutes for folks to filter into the room and we'll begin shortly. Again, we'll just give another couple minutes to make sure everybody has joined us, and then we will get started. All right. Well, it looks like we're a couple of minutes past 2 o'clock and looks like our numbers are settling in. So we'll go ahead and get started so that we have plenty of time to make sure we get through our presentation and all of your all's questions. First, welcome to Living on Campus, the student experience. My name is Misty Denham-Barrett and I am the Associate Director of Residence Life, working primarily with our first year residential students. My pronouns are she, hers. And I will allow my colleague to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Martin Sagendorf and I'm the Associate Director of Housing Assignments and Communication for HR or Housing and Residence Life at American University. Great to meet you all. He, him are my pronouns, and yeah, just looking forward to connecting with you all today.
Just a quick note as we get started, please, if you have questions that you think of throughout our presentation, please drop them into the Q&A feature on the Zoom. We will, however, wait until the end of the presentation to go through a majority of the questions, just so that we can keep up with our presentation, and we may answer questions that you have as we go through the presentation. So please just drop those there, and then we'll have time at the end to go through as many questions as we are allowed, or as we have time allotted. So a brief overview. So this is Housing and Residence Life here at AU. Martin and I represent just a small portion of the leadership team and staff within our department, more of which I will show you in some slides ahead so that you can get an idea of what our team looks like. Essentially, we are here to support and help students transition to their living on campus experience, whatever that may entail. And so from the residential experience as it relates to socializing and getting to know residents, to the actual physical aspects of the building and the more technical pieces of securing your housing assignments and working with our team on that end, we sort of cover the entire spectrum of what all encompasses living on campus and what that could mean, and helping you navigate that entire experience as you start as first year students, and then as some of you progress throughout the next 4 years, potentially living with us during your entire career here at AU. So we hope that this offers you a good foundation as you prepare for that transition, and is able to answer some of the, I'm sure, many burning questions you have about what it means to live on campus at AU. One of the first things that we want to talk about a little bit is some of the important features on campus related to support and safety, which are really some of the most important aspects of our role in housing and residence life for our students who are joining us on campus. Next slide. So one of the first things that folks usually have questions about, and one of the first areas that you'll encounter when you move on campus is our front desk operation. So every one of our communities has a 24/7 front desk staff that is staffed with our desk receptionists. And these students are trained to be able to answer questions, address student concerns, direct you to resources that you may have, answer general questions. They also do some of the technical things that you may need assistance with. If you're locked out of your room and you need a temporary access key, they help with that. They assist with any number of concerns that may come up, and they're sort of a go-to place for students to stop and get assistance. They also have access to our resident assistant and professional staff if additional support is needed. And I'll talk a little bit more about what some of those roles look like later on in the presentation. So as you see here, this is just a small sampling of the types of staff that we have within our office. So we have resident assistants, which are fellow undergraduate students. So these are returning students, sophomores, juniors, seniors, who are here to help and support you. There are anywhere from 1 to 2, sometimes more on each floor within the first year residence halls. And they are trained over the course of many weeks on ways to support and help you navigate your time here on campus. So they may do things such as put on social events for you to interact with one another. They may point you to the right resources, help connect you to the dean of students or your academic advisor if you're struggling in any kind of way, help you navigate many different situations that you might encounter in the residence halls. Our community directors are who our resident assistants are supervised by. Our community director team are full-time master's level professionals, who also live on campus. And they sort of help facilitate the day-to-day functions of the building, as well as helping students navigate some of those larger student resources and connecting folks around campus, putting on larger scale events and programs to help you navigate your first several weeks and connect you to the larger university community. And then in addition to them are our leadership team. As I mentioned, me and Martin are a part of that leadership team, but there are several other assistant and associate directors, as well as our 2 directors within Housing and Residence Life who lead and guide our team to make sure that we provide the best support and engagement that we can for students who live with us on campus. This is a picture of some of our folks. You'll see Martin and me there in our beautiful glory of our headshots, as well as several of the rest of our team. So we have Lisa Freeman, our Director of Housing, or Director of Residence Life, and my supervisor, Ashley Boltushek, as well as members of Martin's team on the communications, Kristen Pittman, Dante Moore, Desi, Jeff, Katie. These are a lot of people within our office that are all here to support you and have very different functional areas that lead to the success of your time here with us. And one of the most important aspects of what our team does that provides support to students is our on-call and after-hours support. So you may have heard references to, or even in like social media or popular media, seen reference to the roles of an RA and what an RA may do in the residence halls. And sometimes they're on call or they're on duty. You might have heard different phrases about what that means. Essentially, what it means is that 24/7, there is a staff member available and is sort of available specifically after hours when our offices are closed to help students navigate through crises that may arise, situations where they need support. And there are various levels of on-call and after-hours support, but that starts with our resident assistants who are on call in every community, up through our community directors who are the professional staff, first line of support after hours. I think the next slide is a picture of them. Yep, so these are our lovely community directors, some of which that we have. We also do have a few staff who aren't pictured here who will be joining us later this summer and we are excited about. But these are live-in staff, and they primarily focus on the supervision of our resident assistants, the community engagement and mentoring, as I mentioned before. But they are also likely someone that you'll see on campus after hours, helping students navigate anything that might come up after hours where they need staff support. One other aspect of support, and as well as after hours potential support, is our relationship with our Dean of Students office. Some of the staff pictured here. We work with them in a partnership to help students navigate difficult situations that they may be experiencing. You may unfortunately experience something during your time here that results in you needing additional support on the academic side, as well as potentially on the social side. Whether it's potentially the loss of a family member or an illness that you need to navigate. These are all life events that happen to us even when we're in college. And so our staff in residence life works really closely with the Dean of Students office to provide support to help students navigate those situations. And some of those include wellness checks, which could mean our staff, checking in on you during these various situations to see how you're doing. Being able to relay information to your families if necessary and appropriate, really just trying to provide the best level of support for you as you navigate your time here on campus. So those are all just a few of and very light touches on all of the areas of student, staff, and support that we offer in housing and residence life, as well as with our partners in Dean of Students.
Thanks, Misty. So I'll take over here for a bit, and I'll be sharing some information about kind of our behind the scenes, but also where you'll be living, which is the piece that the staff that I work with are in place to make sure you have your housing assignment, and then once you get here, that our residential facilities are in great condition. So we'll talk about a few pieces there. So up first, I think as a base level, it's really important to understand, that our halls are more than just buildings. We really see our residence halls across the entire campus as, they're really home to many people, not just the people that might come to mind, which are the students who are living there on any given day. For instance, Misty and our officers are in one of the residence halls. So, we're right there with you all, and, and we spend a substantial amount of, our time in those buildings. And as a result, we take pride in them. And, in a sense, they're our home as well for the time that we're there. And that also includes our staff who work in the building who may not live there, which are some of our housekeepers, some of our facilities staff, guests. We have academic spaces in some of our residence halls, so we'll have faculty in there. So in a sense, our residence halls really belong to the whole campus, and that's something we're proud of. And I think that's the mindset that we would encourage all of you to come into them. And certainly they are your home. You'll be staying there all the time. And with that in mind, we hope you're going to take pride in those spaces. We hope that you're going to be able to share that pride with others when someone comes to visit you. And with that in mind, we do expect that you're going to be treating the halls, specifically our common spaces, with respect to the understanding that others are sharing them as well, right? And I think that probably comes pretty intuitive to everyone, but it is an important consideration where I think some of the mindset that I take when I'm walking the halls is if I see a piece of trash on the floor, it's all of our home, so I'm going to pick it up and toss it. I don't need to wait for our housekeeping staff to come and do that. So I think that's the mindset that really builds the best residential community, and that's why we're excited to have you all join and help every year reinvent that residential community. And coming back from a year where we had very few students on campus, you all will get to help define that. With that in mind, I'm going to talk a little bit about our those housekeeping and facility staff. So just to note on that end, we do have a great staff of housekeepers who will be working through all of our residence halls throughout the year to make sure they're cleaned and in great condition. If you've seen any of our virtual tours, that's kind of the base level that they're working with to make sure all the spaces are they're clean. They come in every day with a lot of pride. You'll see them taking they'll be there kind of scrubbing every little detail of a counter because they take pride in you all enjoying that space. And then we have our facilities staff, and those are the ones who we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, but they're there to, make sure that if anything's not working, that it's resolved quickly, because again, that defines how we all enjoy the space, and they take a lot of, pride in that. And so you'll really see that when you come, and, in addition to the, the RAs that Misty talked about, I think the housekeeping and the facility staff are some of the staff that you'll see the most regularly. And they're really, excited to usually get to connect with you. And, some of my favorite staff to get to know as I've worked at every university I've worked at in my career. In addition to that, as we kind of think about that community responsibility, we are very proud of our residence halls in the sense that we have, kitchen spaces on every floor, we have lounges, we have laundry spaces on every floor. So with that in mind, it's great that you'll have that community space, you'll be able to gather there. But with that in mind, we hope that you'll, again, take pride in the space. And if you see an issue with something, you'll address it. And we'll talk a little bit more about, hey, if I see something that's broken, how do I address that? And I think that really sets up the best experience for all of our students. So with that in mind, we'll talk a little bit more about how do you, address concerns in the building. So from a larger perspective, we have a system called 2Fix. So that's where you'll be able to submit any sort of a work order. So in a sense, that's, anything ranging from, hey, a light bulb is out, to a chair is broken, to, maybe there's a leak coming out from a sink somewhere. Any of those sort of things, there's a process to submit them. We'll share more about that when you get here. We have a whole web page dedicated to it. But it's really important that you understand that that's a resource to you. And our staff take a lot of pride in making sure the facilities are in great condition. So if you see something that needs addressed in your room or in a community space, you can simply submit them there. They do have an option to submit an emergency call. And so again, those would be things like, there's a leak, a flood, something that's going to, cause considerable disruption to the building or damage to the building, or potentially, a hazard to anyone who's in the building. So again, we'll ask that you all keep an eye out for those, much like our staff will, and address those. And I will note that the facility staff work to prioritize in for a repair, and sometimes that means it can take a day or two to get to ones that are not as prioritized as high, but they do take a lot of pride in their work, and they will be very diligent to get to you and share updates with you. So again, we work with that department and have a really good relationship, and I think you'll feel that very quickly when you get here.
Great, thank you, Martin. And so in thinking of all of those things, I'm sure you are eagerly starting to think about, how do I actually prepare for my transition to campus? And what does that look like? What does that mean? And one of the areas that we want to focus on, that I want to focus on, and that I don't think has necessarily, that students don't often think about enough as they're transitioning to campus, is what does it mean to have a roommate, and how do I prepare for that experience, especially if you've never had that in the past, or maybe your roommate's been your sibling, which your relationship with that person might be much different than rooming with someone who you don't know as much about. So as we transition to the next slide, there are a few things that I want to share and encourage you to really think about as you prepare for having a roommate on campus, navigating those relationships. And as now you have your roommate assignments, and you will know who your roommate is and be able to begin to get to know them before you arrive to campus. These are important things to start thinking about and having conversations with that person. So knowing what you really want out of your roommate relationship. Something that I will tell you that might be contrary to where you're feeling right now is that your roommate does not have to be your best friend. And sometimes it's often better that they're not, in all honesty, though they may be, and that is totally okay. But I think that sometimes the balance of having friendships and spaces outside of your room where you interact with other people can be really beneficial. So it's important for you to know, what kind of relationship do you want with your roommate? Do you want one that is super close and feels like a best friendship, and that's how you want to navigate it? Or do you want to have one that has a little bit maybe higher boundaries, and this is just someone that I live with, and we cooperate and we work really well together, but I don't necessarily plan to spend time with them socially outside of the room? Those are important things to really know as you navigate this experience and talk about with the other person, so that you don't have different expectations about what that relationship looks like. And really thinking about your temperaments, what questions should you be asking to your roommate that are important for you in figuring out how you're going to navigate that relationship? what common ground do you have? What things do you have in common? What things do you maybe differ on, and you have to work and be preemptive about some compromises to think about, you know, talking about what your schedules look like for the fall. You know, some of you may have really early classes, and your roommate may have classes that don't start till after 10 a.m. So how are you going to navigate getting up early and sharing the space, and what does that look like in the room in terms of, you know, I'm an early riser, or I prefer to sleep in a little bit and I stay up late. All of these kinds of things are really important conversations to have as you share a space with someone for the first time, but also during a really, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess stressful time, a stressful transition where your tensions and your stress is going to be high. You're starting a whole new phase in your life away from home, and you are navigating many different aspects. And so your room here at AU, which we want to be your home here, is often a refuge, a safe place that you want to go to so you can relax, you can de-stress, you can sleep, you can study, you can find some restorative energy there. And so it's really important that that relationship with your roommate be a good one, or one that's sustainable. So the more you can have these kinds of conversations before you get here, the more you'll be set up for success to navigate and transition onto campus smoothly. A few other things to really start to consider is, what does sharing resources or personal items look like? You know, you may be feel like you're totally comfortable. You know, you buy a bunch of snacks and it's like, okay, I bought all of these, but my roommate, you know, I really don't want them eating them, or I don't really care if they eat them. And you may then later change your mind, but you need to be able to communicate that, and set up those boundaries ahead of time. So maybe you both contribute money to a communal bin of snacks, and that's how you navigate, and you take turns refilling it. Whatever system you come up with that works for you is great. But it's important to communicate about those kinds of things ahead of time, and also set boundaries about what personal items are okay for your roommate to maybe use or borrow, and what is not. And never assume that it's something that is understood, because the way that people maybe are brought up, or different cultures, different experiences, different backgrounds, those boundaries or those expectations may look different for different people. So never expect that that person has those same boundaries and those same expectations as you, as it relates to sharing space, sharing personal items. And even related to cleanliness, you know, what are those standards going to look like? And how do you navigate those? Many of you will have a shared bathroom on the floor that is, as Martin said, cleaned by our staff, but that by no means, I'm getting topped up in my words there, that you should, you know, disrespect that space and leave it dirty, because there may be time between when you last use it and when it gets cleaned and when the next person uses it. And those community spaces can be spaces that you take pride in, whether it is, you know, personalizing it in some way, or really trying to make it a fun community-based environment with your RA and navigating what that looks like. But at the end of the day, communication is key, and learning how to communicate with your roommate, with your floor mates about those standards will be really crucial to your success in those relationships over the first few weeks on campus. And that really leads into what it means to navigate conflict, and also how to leverage your resources within housing and residence life and campus to help you navigate through that. The first thing I will really say is that conflict is normal and it will happen. So brace yourselves now for it. It's okay. It is going to happen, whether it is with your roommate, with someone in one of your classes, with someone down the hall. You are going to have differences or moments of conflict that you have to navigate through and communicate through. And so that may be something that's new for you. That may be something that is difficult for you. That may be something that you don't mind at all, and you really don't have a problem addressing conflict. But the person that you are addressing the conflict with doesn't have that same conflict resolution style. So how do you navigate that conversation? These are all moments where the role of the resident assistant and the community director can really help you navigate these conversations or these situations to come to the best solution at the end of the day. So you may go to your resident assistant, I'm having this conflict with my roommate. I don't really know how to navigate that. And they'll be able to coach you and provide you some guidance on how to have that conversation, how to work through that potentially with one another so that you can continue to live together and navigate that relationship. And the community director is an additional resource in those situations, able to step in and add another layer of assistance if necessary. They are also the ones that train and teach the resident assistants how to navigate those situations. And they may get involved if the conflict is sort of larger within the community, or something that involves across floors, things of that nature, where you might be navigating, maybe you just had a conflict with someone who lives downstairs or something like that, and you want to navigate and resolve that. A community director might be more involved in situations like that. But this is a shared living space. You are all living together in one giant, essentially what you might consider an apartment complex. You're all sharing spaces. You're all interacting day to day with one another. And so these things are going to happen over the course of the year. And so it's important to get in front of them, be proactive about how you might address them, and really knowing what your resources are to navigate through them. Being the resident assistant, the community director, even myself in some cases. You'll see me around campus often when you get here. And once you see me, you can't miss me. I'm 6'4", so once you recognize me, there's really no avoiding me at that point. So please feel free to also stop and engage me at any point. I'm happy to connect with students and help you connect to resources. My office is really fun, so you're welcome to stop by there as well. Same with Martin. Martin is also an available resource. His office is actually closer to the front door, so you might see him before you see me. But we're all really excited to welcome you and have you come to campus with us this fall, and really get a chance to connect and help you navigate your transition to campus. So Martin's going to talk a little bit about the importance of your physical space.
Yeah, thank you, Misty. And I think one of the pieces that was standing out to me as we've been going through, and hopefully has caught some of your attention as well, in addition to what Misty said, is we've had some really great photos on many of the slides showing actual residence hall rooms and how students make those their own home. And and that's, I think, a really important part is we want you all to come in and really you'll see on our virtual tours, we've shown some of the basic level kind of decorations, but I think one of the really exciting parts for every student is coming in and making that, in a sense, blank slate, what's important for you to be successful, to be happy, to really make it your home. So we'll jump to our next slide on that exact topic. So we want to help you start to think about and prepare for making your home at AU. So to do that, I will note up front, we will be sharing a series of emails going forward throughout the summer up until you move in, getting you ready to arrive to campus. And one of the things that we'll be messaging about shortly, but you can certainly take a look at it now if you've not already, is we do have a packing list on our webpage. So it's pretty extensive. We are updating it regularly. So definitely, keep an eye on that. We constantly are getting good questions about things that aren't directly stated on there. So we're glad to clarify it and update it so that, anything students are thinking about, we have on that list. So you'll see on there, it includes things to bring, things not to bring, and some things you can bring with some exceptions. So, I won't go into overly fine detail there, but I think a few of the pieces of note are that, recently we've changed our policy to allow single serve coffee makers with automatic shutoff. So that would be, something like a Keurig. So that was something we've recently added to our allowed list. So again, if that's something you'd like in your room, Misty and I are regular coffee drinkers, but again, tea, whatever you're looking to make out of that, those are now allowed, and you'll see that that's on our list. And beyond that, we have a really great list of items that you should be thinking about and preparing for. I think one of the really key pieces that is important to that relationship with your roommate that Misty mentioned is definitely talking to your roommate or roommates in advance and saying, hey, here's what I'm bringing, what do you have? I think there's a lot of ways where, you can reduce what you need to necessarily bring if you're all in communication and comfortable sharing certain items. Again, you don't need 3 water pitchers if you're going to have, a fridge in your room and things like that. So definitely keep that in mind. And then in terms of items not to bring, there's a pretty extensive list. Many of them are fairly straightforward, I think, in terms of, hot plates and space heaters are not something we do allow, certainly in the vein of a space heater. If for some reason the temperature in your room is not, meeting your needs, you do have some flexibility to adjust that in your space, but that is also where a to-fix request can go in. We don't want anyone to be uncomfortable, but there are some limits on what you can do to resolve that and what our staff can do. And then the one piece that I will note is, because we usually get questions about this, is about microwaves. So we'll talk a little bit more about this on a slide to come, but microwaves are only allowed when they come from our a vendor that we work with. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And again, I think your OLs are really great resources. They've lived on campus. They've decorated their rooms. So again, if you're starting to think about some of that, I think they're great, great folks to connect with and get some inspiration. And then certainly I'll share some more resources we have as we move on. So yeah, with that in mind, here's a series of photos that I think we've seen some of these throughout our time today, and certainly we'll have some more on our webpage and on some of our social media. But one of the things that we do to, help you really show off the space that you've made at your home is we have a competition every fall semester that's called the Best Nest, and it's your opportunity to, show off your room, show how you've decorated. I'm absolutely wowed every single year with what gets submitted. Most of these look much nicer than even where I live. So I think all the inspiration is great, but really at the end of the day, it's not about, it doesn't have to be the HGTV room. It just has to be yours. And there's an opportunity to, in that competition to explain why this space is yours and why it is special. So be it photos or, certain decorations that you'll see in some of these images. That's how you'll make that yours. And, we really hope that you'll take some pride in that. And I will also say it's totally fine to not have a perfect vision of what your room's going to look like until you get there, because I think that's one of the, the key pieces too, is get there, talk to your roommate, see how you kind of want to work on that together. And that can evolve over a year. You'll be in that space for, a considerable amount of time. So I think a lot of students will, want to prepare very far in advance and have everything with them when they arrive. But I also think there's value in waiting and certainly having the opportunity to order things in advance. And with that in mind, I will also note we do have a webpage called Personalize Your Room. And so that's where, again, you'll learn about our micro fridge vendor. So that's a microwave and refrigerator together. You can bring your own refrigerator within some limits that are listed on our webpage. But if you want a microwave in your room, you'll need to rent it from our vendor. There's a reason for that, because when the microwave goes on and the fridge goes off, it helps reduce the load on the electrical system. But again, you have both of those, and they're really great options. We also have, bed lofts that you can rent. I know I saw some questions about bed risers. So I will note that the beds have the ability to, by their base default, which is kind of the bottom middle photo here, they can move up and down within that standard frame, but you can also rent a bed loft, and that's where you can, raise it up even higher, have your desk underneath, have some extra, space. So again, we've communicated, I think, about that with most of you. So you should have the opportunity to either reserve those through the housing portal or through the direct vendor, as we've kind of instructed. So again, take a look at that. That'll help you prepare your space. And as long as you order those over the summer, we'll have those delivered to your room when you arrive. So you're ready to go and enjoy. And definitely, again, with the micro fridge, talk to your roommate to make sure you're both not ordering them. Generally speaking, you don't need more than one in a room. But again, that's where those conversations come in.
We got to work on your interior design skills, perhaps, for your office too. Okay, so now transitioning a little bit into what community engagement and some of the sort of community standards. These will both be covered in much more detail when you arrive on campus. So you will expect there'll be more details about this provided in the emails forthcoming over the summer that Martin mentioned earlier. But you will have an opportunity to have community meetings with your RA as well as your community director to learn about more of these things in much more detail, especially as you are physically here on campus with us. But I wanted to touch on these briefly as well so that you have an idea a little bit about what some of this campus engagement might look like. So this is an area, community engagement is sort of our term, or residential engagement is really a term that we use to encompass all the things that our team does to help students get connected on campus and be both socially and academically successful. We feel and we have a responsibility to help students navigate that experience on campus. So you'll have a number of resources from your academic advisor to your faculty and your professor, financial aid folks, your OLs, all kinds of folks that will be resources to you and opportunities for community engagement. But you spend the majority of your time when not in classes in your residence hall. And so your residence hall staff, our team, really wants to make sure that we are present and supportive and help you navigate through this. So whether that's connecting you on campus to your RA, helping you find clubs and organizations that might be important to you, helping you find an office that's hidden in a building that is hard to find unless you've been there, or finding the best places on campus to get coffee. As Martin mentioned, we are both coffee fiends. So if you need ideas about that, I have my preferences of coffee places on campus, but I'll say that offline. This is being recorded. But there's lots of ways that we really work to try and help you feel connected and feel seen. We want you to be able to find a community here on campus that allows you to generate a sense of belonging and really help you sustain that energy and that connection so that you come to campus, transition well, feel supported, and are able to navigate the next few years to complete your degree and then move into whatever field you may be here to study for. So that support can come from the resident assistants. It may come from folks in your living learning communities. Many of you will be a part of living learning communities that will help you navigate that as well and provide touch points of engagement. You may also work and be a part of the Residence Hall Association, which you'll get more information about over the summer. There will be info sessions in August for folks who are interested in some campus leadership opportunities within the Residence Hall Association. There also are always opportunities to actually work for Housing and Residence Life if that's something that you're interested in. We have students who work for us as desk receptionists, as well as office assistants on Martin's end of the team, student office support. So we are really wanting students to be connected to our office and work for us in various ways. And then also at the end of your first semester, you'll learn what it could mean if you wanted to be a resident assistant yourself. So you might connect with your resident assistant really well, or you may already think, hey, this is something that I might want to do. And so materials will come out about applying to be a resident assistant near the end of the first semester. And we also send out regular communication and post on the student job board when we're hiring for desk receptionists or other positions within our department. So these are other excellent ways to get connected to the community as well as to the university, and some of ways to also make a little money while you're doing that. So that's always a bonus. A few things that I wanted to just rule. I'm not usually one for putting a whole lot of text on slides, and I am not going to read all of these to you, but these are a couple of the points that will be touched on much more in detail with your resident assistants when you arrive on campus. And these are really the important tenets of what it means to be a respectful, inclusive community member at AU and beyond. So as Martin mentioned earlier, putting an emphasis on treating your floor and your community with respect, really working to foster an inclusive community, being engaged, attending community initiatives and floor meetings. The whole benefit to living on campus is being able to connect with more folks and connect to the university in a way that you can't necessarily do living off campus. So take advantage of those opportunities. And it's really going to be very important too for folks to adhere to our health and safety and physical distancing procedures. As we know, those are being finalized and updated from this past year for the fall. So there'll definitely be more details shared by the university and Residence Life in terms of what those will look like in our residence halls come this fall. So make sure you're paying attention to updates as it relates to those. And it's also really important that you are aware of and uphold the policies and procedures that you are expected of as AU students and community members. Some of which I will post more about in your new Eagle Connect platform over the summer. So definitely look out for my posts in the communities there for students living on campus. And I hope to engage with some of you on that platform where I'll go into a little bit more detail about some of the things we've covered in this session today. But at the end of the day, if you see something concerning, say something. You know, whether that is a student on your floor who may be struggling and you know your RA could potentially help them, or a broken window that you're not sure if anyone's reported yet. You know, don't walk by and say, well, somebody must have seen it and said something, so why should I? You know, it never hurts to get more than one report about a concerning situation so that we can address that and ensure that whether the student or the community has the support and is safe for everyone involved. And so lastly, these are sort of the big three, what I like to call the big three policies that we usually get the most questions about or the most concerns as students navigate onto campus their first year. And so again, I'm not going to go over these policies verbatim for you right now, because honestly, you probably might not remember all of them by the time you get here in August, but these are ones that come up quite often. And I really encourage you to go to the website, read through the student code of conduct and the residence hall regulations, understand what's expected of you so that you can avoid concerns and issues with these policies in the future. Obviously, all students underage are not allowed to drink on campus. And so those are sort of clear policies that are also laws that we have to abide by that relate to alcohol and drugs. So those are ones that definitely make sure you're aware of and pay attention to as it relates to coming to campus. Also noise, this is a common one as we've shared throughout much of the presentation. This is a community space. You're sharing this space with many folks, many students, staff. As Martin said, there's many staff offices in our residence halls. So there'll be staff here throughout the day. A number of the professional staff on the Residence Life team also lives on campus. Your community directors are also potentially your neighbors. So there are lots of reasons to be considerate of noise. And so you'll learn about what are the actual, noise quiet hours. What are the hours when that's enforced versus community noise courtesy hours and what those mean. So that there are differences to that. And those nuances will be explained in more detail when you arrive to campus, but definitely make sure you're checking and looking at that. Also guests. So this is something, the guest policy for this fall has not been finalized as COVID policies are being updated. But one thing that does not change, regardless of what the specific guest policy is that guests that you bring into the building are your responsibility. They are essentially acting as if they were you. So if you are able to, depending on the policies this fall, to bring guests on campus, you're responsible for their behavior. So it's really important to be mindful of that as you navigate bringing guests into the community and the levels of respect that they treat the community with as well. So just wanted to make sure to reiterate that. Again, some of these policies and procedures have not been finalized for this fall, but details and more information about them will be shared before you arrive in August. And that is the wrap up of the material that we specifically have to go over. So now I think with perfect timing, we can go over some questions. Let's see. Martin, the only questions so far that have popped up into the Q&A, most of them are ones that you have touched base on because they're sort of room specific ones. But if you want to potentially reiterate, oh, here's one. The beds in the rooms, Martin, are they regular size or extra long twin?
Yeah, and Misty, I'll kind of just touch on, I think the four that I see so far. So really great question. So with that in mind, I see questions about dimensions, about dimensions is definitely one. So we do have information on our webpage that lists out dimensions for our rooms. So again, you'll be able to see some of those. I will always note that those are approximate. Some of our rooms have slight variations based on kind of the construction of a building. So if it's absolutely critical to have the true size for something you're bringing, it's usually best to wait until you arrive. I will also note that our virtual tours are great. So if you haven't experienced those yet, please head to your given residence hall webpage, take a look at the virtual tours. There is a measurement tool inside those virtual tours. They're actually, the system we use measures the rooms as it was capturing the virtual tours. So you'll have access to that as well, again, with the understanding that those are approximate to that specific room and may vary room to room. So that's a great one. And in terms of the beds, they're twin beds, so you can bring twin bedding for them. We have a pretty extensive packing list, again, as I noted, so you can see that just there as well. So please take a look at those as you go. And then I do see a question, I think it's from Eva, asking about, if you don't want to get a bed loft, which is basically doubles the height of your bed, is there still some flexibility in adjusting the bed? And there is. Basically where the metal frame attaches to the wooden ends of the bed, there's a track with, I think it's around 7 or 8 different notches that you can move the bed up or down. So if you want the bed right up against the floor, you can lower it down as far as you can. If you want, if you want it raised up a bit, you can do that as well. And they're definitely, you'll see it in the virtual tours, especially if you get a sense. I know the question had a specific measurement size, but I think it's easily 2 feet or more. You can go higher on them. But that's a great thing when you move into the room. It's a little involved to kind of flip the bed over and adjust it. But if you've got some people helping you can do that right at move-in. And we usually have them by default at kind of the midpoint. And then the next question I do see, which has come in, is just about air conditioning. Yes, all of our residence halls are air conditioned. So definitely something we're proud of there. And it is going to be very, very toasty when you all move in. So you'll appreciate it. Yeah, and I see a question about move-in time slots. Do you want me to take that one, Misty?
Sure.
Yeah, so this is a great question. So if you haven't already, for those of you who have received your housing assignment, which should be most first-year students, you'll have the opportunity to go into the housing portal and select the date and time you want to arrive to campus. So it's listed as a 1-hour time block. That's kind of how our system is set up. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to completely have completed the move-in process by the end of that 1-hour period. So we'll share if there's any other restrictions in terms of length of time, but we know it's an important day. We know you want to set up your room. We know, family there with you is important. So there will be a restriction on number of non-residents who can be with you at move-in, which is 2. We'll collect those names from you as we get a little bit closer, just so we have that for contract tracing purposes. But again, that is, it's more of a time you should arrive to campus than a time you have to complete your entire move. And we'll also be sharing some other exciting news about move-in, which I think AU does it the best of every school I've worked at so far, where basically we're going to have staff and volunteers who are going to unload your car. They're going to bring everything up to your room while you're basically sitting inside an air-conditioned building, enjoying your time. And then we'll let you know, hey, your things are in your room, you can go unpack. So we make it really simple and smooth for you. And again, with that in mind, that there's no constriction to that 1-hour time point that you have to be done with your move-in. It's more you should be arriving at the start of that period. You're welcome, Kathleen. And then I see the 2-guest rule, if there's any exceptions to it. So it's not just necessarily about the number of people in a given room. It's about the volume of people in the building, and we're still doing that for health and safety reasons. Again, we know it's really important that family and friends are part of your move-in experience. So for now, you should be planning to just have the 2. If there is some additional need, you can certainly let us know. We're glad to, be adaptable. Usually if it's like, hey, my little, sibling needs to come along, we can't leave them at home, that sort of thing, we have some flexibility with, but we would ask otherwise that you plan for 2. And we'll be sending some more information. Again, we'll have a series of emails that will be going out to you every 2 to 3 weeks leading up to move-in. So I would just hold on that question until we send the message specific about guests, which should be coming fairly soon.
And I'll also say, sort of to address this last question, there are lots of places on campus that will be sort of public and folks can go to, whether it's the outside spaces or other spaces that won't be as restricted as the residence halls, because there won't be as many people coming and going during move-in. So you will be able to, if your family wants to go to the bookstore or go and do other things like that around campus, check out some of the coffee shops that will be open. There'll be lots of other spaces where, potentially more than those 2 people that are helping you move in will be able to still be on campus and engaged as they might be helping you and sort of navigate through that. Can you repeat what you said about move-in day movers, Martin?
Yeah. So again, we're going to send out some really great ways to help you visualize what the day is going to be like. So hang tight with those. We're actually should be producing a video to show you in the past what that move-in days look like. But the rough flow is you'll be told a certain, entrance to campus. You'll come in through that entrance, and then we'll have, staff and our great AUPD officers will be there to guide you to a certain point on campus where you'll then get out of your car or however you've gotten to campus. If it's an Uber or bus, you'll get out of your vehicle, and then we have a space where you'll be checking in and getting some other important resources like your University One card. Quick plug there, if you've not yet submitted that photo, I believe it's due July 1st, and that can all be found on the One Card website if you search for it. And then basically, while you're doing the check-in process, which again will be in a nice air-conditioned building and chatting with some of our staff and getting resources, we will have professional movers and staff volunteers. So Move-In is really a campus-wide event. We have faculty, staff from all across the university who will volunteer to be part of your experience. So they'll be taking care of the heavy lifting of getting everything up to your room, and then basically we will send you a message that says, your things are in your room, head back and start unpacking. So it's a really great day. And we call it the move-in experience because it really is an experience. And our goal is that you're more focused on, the people that you're with and the emotions of the day, and less so about your physical belongings moving up an elevator. So we'll take care of a lot of those logistics for you. And again, we'll have a lot more of that to come shortly. I do see some questions about bed lofts, canceling, ordering, when will they arrive? So if you should be able to go, students can cancel they can order and cancel them through the housing portal, I believe. If they're not able to, they can certainly reach out to us at housinginamerican.edu and we'll follow up on that. The system should allow you to do that if you've already paid, and it'll just take a little time to process. And then, we just ask that you submit your requests for bed lofts as soon as possible. So we will share a specific date when we need those because we'll plan for it. But our goal is that if you submit any of our vendor requests, which are the bed lofts, the micro fridge, the renting a safe, that if you submit those in advance over the summer, so usually if you submit them by the end of July, we'll have them in your room when you arrive. So just start planning for that, and then again we'll share any deadlines based on our vendor needs to make sure that they can meet your capacity.
Martin, the last question we have right now is do you have any details about whether they'll be able to ship items ahead in advance?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm coming from Colorado and Massachusetts. So yeah, I used to live right on the Massachusetts border in Connecticut. So with that in mind, we know that the shipping questions are very important to you all and you want to plan ahead. So we do have some really exciting changes coming to our package delivery process for this year. We're finalizing right now what those are going to be, and then we're going to share out with you a certain date that's the earliest that any packages can arrive. And then when you can start to pick them up. But we intend to, for you to be able to grab your packages quickly upon your arrival because we know you need them. And then we just always recommend if there's anything you urgently need, right when you arrive, like medication, probably your bedding, those are best things to bring with you if you're able to. But again, we'll share some more details on the specifics of when you can start sending, how to label everything. We have our mail services will now be handling all of our mail and packages. So we're just making sure that they're prepared for your needs because we work very closely with students and can anticipate those. So once we have that set, we should be sending a message out in the next couple weeks with those specifics. So just hang tight on specific orders so far, but by all means, look at our packing list and start to plan for what you would like to bring.
I'll also add that it can sometimes be helpful. I've seen families or for folks wait to buy things until they actually get here. There are plenty of places really close by, whether it's a Target or Marshall's or Nordstrom's that are super close by. So if you want to wait till you get here to buy, you know, some of the, whether it's all the toiletries that you might need or food or the your bedding, things like that, because it's just easier to not travel or pack those things. You do have abilities. We are super close to a lot of those places, whether you're driving or hopping on the shuttle or just walking down the street. A lot of those places are super accessible, and you'll be able to get to those places on the day of move-in as well. So yes, if you, there's a question about being able to drop off items if anything has been forgotten. Yes, once your student has moved in, you will be able to potentially drop off things or anything of that nature that he might need later on. And again, you know, they'll also have access to places in the area. So as you're unpacking, you're like, crap, we forgot this. You can just run down the street most of the times. A lot of places are super close. There's a Walgreens that's even closer than the Target. There's lots of stuff in the immediate area for folks. Do rooms come with a doorstop? I do not believe rooms come with an actual doorstop. We actually, in most cases, encourage the doors to not be propped open for fire safety concerns. So rooms do not come with a doorstop.
Yeah, and while we have a lull in the questions, I will just reiterate that we have a pretty extensive move-in webpage, which is linked right off of the homepage for Housing and Residence Life. We'll continue to be updating that. You know, I actually was just making some updates this morning. So we'll be updating that all the way through move-in, including, you know, questions about, you know, mail-in packages. And our goal, as I shared, is roughly every 2 to 3 weeks, we'll send an email and say, hey, here's kind of the next big things you need to be thinking about. Here's the, you know, the due dates that are coming up if there's anything we need you to do. And here's some more information to prepare you for your arrival. So I think really the big piece is just, you know, making sure if students are on here or family members, that students are watching their AU email. We did collect family email addresses on the housing application. So if a student submitted one of those, we'll also send some general information to families because we, you know, value our relationship with you. So please, you know, look out for those messages. We'll also be usually copying the emails onto our website so anyone can just publicly see them as well. So we have a really great series of information that we'll be sharing out as we know the questions are here already. But certainly if anything is urgent, you can also reach out to us through, you know, housinginamerican.edu. My staff will get back to you. And we also have our chat feature, which is live from 1 to 4. So if after this you have any questions, you'll have about an hour to chat with our staff before the day ends, and then picking back up again tomorrow at 1.
We'll wrap up with this one really fun question that I actually appreciate. So on move-in day, is there an official time when parents will potentially need to leave campus? So yes and no. It really will depend on the schedule of the day and what day you move in. So over the course of that week, there'll be different events that first year students will be able to attend over those few days of move-in. And so they may have specific events related to those that run up against their move-in time that are meant for students only. So that could vary depending on what day you might move in with your student. So looks like that's about all of the questions that we have time for today. But as Martin said, please feel free to access us via the webpage, the chat feature, anything of that nature. And please, I will vouch for Martin's emails from Housing and Residence Life. They are never more information than you need. They are really like too long didn't read versions of what you really need. They are not full of a lot of information. So please read through those emails. They are all going to provide a lot of important information for you as you transition to campus. And Martin does a really good job of parsing out what you need when, so that you're not over flooded with information at any one time. So I greatly appreciate Martin and all of that work. So it's been lovely with meeting and interacting with all of you in the chat and the questions. So thank you so much. And we're excited to welcome you in a few weeks.
A little more than a few weeks, but very soon. Yeah, it feels like a few weeks. But yeah,
it feels like a few weeks. Depends on your definition of few. But yeah, in several weeks.
Several weeks. But yeah, and yeah. So again, thank you everybody. We wish you all the best prepping for the summer. We look forward to connecting with you now and certainly in person very soon, which is really exciting. So thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.